For more, CGTN Sean Callebs spoke to Kate Tulenko via Zoom. She's the CEO of Corvus Health, a global health firm. Sean began by asking her about Moderna's vaccine candidate.
Well, no, and the type of vaccine that it's going to produce hasn't been commercially produced before. It's a messenger RNA vaccine, meaning that they inject people with the direct code, the RNA code that will produce the viral protein. So unlike the other vaccines, there's actually no whole virus in the vaccine. So it's very promising. And one of the huge advantages is that potentially they can scale up production faster because it's much easier to sort of cook up the RNA in a laboratory than it is to actually grow the whole adenovirus viruses, which the CanSino and Oxford vaccines are dependent on.
It's also interesting that people are going to look at every aspect of a company. And they announced earnings, and they beat expectations, and the stock went down. Usually nothing affects earnings like, their stock price like earnings. But that's not the case because it's an expectations game. It's also a race going on. What does Moderna have going for it right now? It has hundreds of millions of money, both from the United States and from other entities that want to get on the bandwagon quickly if this stage 3 testing that they're in now proves positive.
Well, I think there are a couple of things that it has going for it. The first is that it has a lot of funding. That it's received, quite a lot of funding from the U.S. government and from other funders and donors as well. The second thing it has going for it is results. The fact that their phase 2 trials worked very well and they're going into the phase 3 trials. Nothing seems like success. Now, of course, we can say, are the stock values overpriced? That may be. How much should the stock market and its changes make us think about the viability of the vaccine, as well as, unfortunately, these vaccines have become politicized as well. And there's this concept now of the vaccine nationalism, which is a little bit concerning.
Talk a bit more about that, because a couple of major companies out there, Novavax and Johnson & Johnson, also in the race. And they've made it clear that their price per dose would be about half of what Moderna would be charging.
Mm-hmm. So the concept of the vaccine nationalism is that the first country to produce a vaccine will keep it for themselves, or will keep the first several million doses, 100 million doses for itself, and not share with other countries. Certainly, what I hope would happen is that when a company has a vaccine that's available for commercial use, that it licenses out the right to produce it to other factories around the world. That way they can leverage the global vaccine industry infrastructure and not just their own factories.
People want it both ways. They want to have the vaccine quickly, and they want to make sure it works. So let's get somebody else to try it first. What is that like playing out?
Yeah, that's a real ethical concern, particularly with people of color, with non-Europeans. The concern is that people of color will be used as guinea pigs during the vaccine trials, but then when the vaccine is commercially available, they will be the last to receive it. But there's a problem the opposite way as well. If we don't include people of color in testing, we don't know whether it's effective in them. We don't know if they have a different side effect profile, because different populations have different genetics, they have different nutritional statuses, different health statuses, different environments. And so that's why it's important to test in very diverse populations. So it's good to know that several of the vaccines are being tested in Brazil and in South Africa, both of which have very diverse populations, including African populations, Asian populations, in Brazil, Native American populations as well.
I watched a fascinating interview with the chief medical officer for the company, and when asked, is it going to work? And I want to read this quote because I want to get this right. It said, the chances are pretty good. Do you need more than that, or is that about the best you can hope for as you reach late phase of testing?
Well, we've never produced a vaccine so quickly, so it's hard to predict what will happen. But remember, vaccines can protect in 2 ways. They can protect you from getting the disease, and then if you get the disease, they can cause you to have an easier course, to get a much less severe form of the disease. We see that in flu, and that's helpful as well, because if you don't have a severe form of the disease, you're not shedding as much, and so you won't transmit it to as many people, and also you're less likely to die or less likely to have severe complications. So that's reassuring as well. Now, regarding the vaccinated we need to reach herd immunity. Everyone's guessed from 60% to 80% of the population. It's something that is not clear because it depends on how infectious the disease is. But right now we know that about 50 to 70% of Americans would say they would get the vaccine.